The alarm system screamed across the bridge of the Council warship Eternal Vigilance. Commander Hyunwoo jumped from his chair, his eyes fixed on the main display screen. Something was wrong with space itself. The readings made no sense at all. "Report," he shouted to his crew. "Sir, we're detecting massive spatial distortions near Sector 7. The gravity readings are off the charts. It's like reality is tearing apart," his science officer called out, her voice shaking. Hyunwoo had served in the Galactic Council Defense Fleet for 20 years. He had seen asteroid collisions, solar flares, and even a black hole formation, but he had never seen anything like this. Space was bending, twisting, and folding in ways that shouldn't be possible. Then they appeared. One by one, massive ships emerged from the distortion. They were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. Their hulls were dark and covered with layers of cosmic dust and frozen debris. These weren't just old ships. These were ancient relics that looked like they had been drifting through space for eternities. Hyunwoo counted them as they kept coming through the tear in space. 10 ships, 20 ships, 30 ships. The final count was 37 vessels, each one broadcasting a signal on frequencies that hadn't been used in millions of years. "Can you translate the signal?" Hyunwoo asked his communications team. The young officer at the station worked frantically, running the signal through every known language database in the galaxy. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the computer found a match buried deep in the historical archives. "Sir, the language is Old Terran. It's been extinct for over 2 million years. The message is an automated distress beacon." Hyunwoo felt his blood run cold. Terran meant human. Humans were the precursors. The ancient race that had vanished from the galaxy long before most modern species had even developed spaceflight. They were legends, myths, ghosts from a forgotten age. "What does the message say?" he demanded. The translation appeared on screen. "This is the 7th Expeditionary Fleet of the Terran Star Republic. We have encountered an unknown temporal anomaly. Request immediate assistance. Last known date, March 15th, year 2247,193 of the Common Era." Hyunwoo did the math in his head. That date was over 2 million years ago. These ships had been lost in time itself. He immediately sent a priority message to the Galactic Council headquarters. This was beyond his authority to handle alone. Within hours, the Council dispatched their fastest ships and their best scientists to the location. Among them was Da Yun, the galaxy's leading expert on extinct languages and ancient civilizations. Da Yun arrived on the Eternal Vigilance and immediately began studying the Terran vessels. She had spent her entire career researching the precursors, dreaming of finding some trace of their existence. Now she was staring at an entire fleet of their ships. "We need to board one of those vessels," she told Hyunwoo. "This is the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. Those ships could be dangerous. We don't know what's inside them," Hyunwoo warned. "Then we need to find out," Da-un insisted. Against standard protocol, Hyunwoo authorized a boarding party. He led the team himself, along with Da-un and a squad of security officers. They chose the largest ship, a massive battleship that the ancient signal identified as TSR Indomitable. The airlock opened with a hiss of stale air that hadn't been breathed in over 1 million years. The boarding team stepped inside with their weapons ready and their scanners active. The interior of the ship was dark and silent. Emergency lighting flickered on as they moved through the corridors, responding to their presence. Everything inside the ship was preserved perfectly. The crew quarters, the weapons bays, the command centers. It was all there, frozen in time. But there were no bodies, no skeletons, nothing to indicate what had happened to the crew. Then they found the cryo bay. Rows upon rows of hibernation pods stretched as far as they could see. Thousands of them. And according to the status displays, they were still active, still functioning after 2 million years. "They're alive," Da-un whispered in amazement. "The crew is still alive." At the center of the cryo bay, they found the ship's artificial intelligence core. It activated when they approached, its holographic display lighting up the chamber. "Welcome aboard the TSR Indomitable," the AI said in perfect Old Terran. "I am Iris Integrated Response and Intelligence System. I have been waiting a very long time for someone to find us." Da-un stepped forward. "Iris, can you tell us what happened to your fleet?" The AI's voice was calm but carried a weight of sadness. "We were on a deep space exploration mission beyond the galactic rim. We encountered a temporal anomaly of unknown origin. The fleet was pulled inside. When we emerged, our instruments indicated that significant time had passed. We had insufficient fuel to return to Terran space. I placed all personnel in cryostasis to preserve their lives and set a distress beacon. I have been broadcasting that beacon for 1,047,612 years. The number was staggering. These people had been asleep for over 1,000,000 years, drifting through space, waiting for rescue. Iris, we need to speak with your commander, Yunwu said. Can you wake someone? I can revive Admiral Tae Yang from stasis. However, I must warn you that he will have many questions. What shall I tell him about the current state of the Terran Star Republic? Hyunwoo and Da-un exchanged looks. How do you tell someone that their entire civilization is extinct? That everyone they ever knew has been dead for hundreds of thousands of years? Just wake him, Hyunwoo said quietly. We'll explain everything. The process took 30 minutes. The pod containing Admiral Taeyang slowly warmed, bringing his body back from the edge of frozen death. When the lid finally opened, a man in his mid-40s sat up slowly, coughing and gasping for air. Taeyang had strong features and dark hair with gray streaks at the temples. His eyes were sharp and intelligent, quickly taking in everything around him. He saw the boarding team in their strange uniforms, saw the alien species standing before him, and his hand instinctively reached for a weapon that wasn't there. Where am I? What year is it? Where is Earth? He demanded in Old Terran. Da-Yun translated his words for Hyunwoo, then responded in the ancient language. She had studied it for decades but never imagined she would actually speak it to a real human. Admiral Tae-Yang, my name is Da-Un. This is Commander Hyunwoo. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. You and your fleet have been lost in time. The current year is 3247,193 Common Era. You have been in cryostasis for over 1,000,000 years. Tae-Yang stared at her. The words seemed impossible, but the evidence was all around him. The strangers before him were clearly not human. Their technology was different. Everything was different. You're saying my crew and I have been asleep for 1,000,000 years? He asked slowly. Yes, Admiral, Da-Un confirmed. Tae-Yang took a deep breath, his military training keeping him calm despite the shock. Then I need to know. What happened to Earth? What happened to humanity? Where is the Terran Star Republic? The silence that followed was heavy and painful. Daeon looked at Hyunwoo, who nodded for her to continue. Admiral, I'm sorry. Humanity is extinct. Earth still exists, but it is no longer inhabited by humans. Your species was wiped out approximately 800,000 years ago by an empire called the Rek Dominion. The Rek themselves collapsed and went extinct 200,000 years later. You and your fleet are the last humans in the entire galaxy. Tae-Yang sat very still. For a long moment he said nothing at all. Then he looked up at the two aliens standing before him. Show me, he said. Show me what happened to my world. Admiral Tae-Yang stood in the medical bay of the Indomitable as 3 more cryopods opened. He had requested his senior staff be awakened immediately. He couldn't face this situation alone. He needed people he trusted, people who understood what they were fighting for. Captain Ji-won was the first to emerge. She commanded the battlecruiser Retribution and had served under Tae-Yang for 15 years. Her tactical mind was sharp as a blade, and she had never lost a ship under her command. When she saw the alien visitors in the bay, her hand went to her sidearm. Stand down, Captain, Tae-Yang said quietly. They're not enemies. At least not yet. Next came Chief Engineer Sang-hoon, a brilliant but gruff man who could fix anything with enough time and spare parts. He had kept the 7th Fleet running through impossible conditions. He looked around the bay with confusion clear on his weathered face. The last was Strategic Officer Kyung-mi, a woman whose ability to predict enemy movements was almost supernatural. She had planned every major operation the fleet had ever conducted. Her eyes were already analyzing everything she saw. Tae-Yang gathered them in a private room and explained everything. The temporal anomaly, the 1,000,000 years of drift through space, the extinction of humanity. Each revelation hit his officers like a physical blow. Ji-won's face went pale. Everyone. My daughter was 3 years old when we left. She would have been waiting for me to come home. Everyone we knew has been dead for hundreds of thousands of years, Tae-Yang said softly. We are all that remains of humanity. Sang-hoon slammed his fist on the table. Then what's the point? Why did Iris even wake us up? Because we're still alive, Kyung-mi said, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. And as long as we're alive, humanity isn't extinct. Not completely. Before they could discuss further, Da-un entered the room with Hyunwoo. The council commander looked uncomfortable, like he was about to deliver more bad news. Admiral Tae-yang, the Galactic Council has reviewed your situation. They want to meet with you, Hyunwoo said through Da-eun's translation. And why would I care what this council wants? Tae-yang asked coldly. Because they control this galaxy now. 15 different species have formed a coalition government. They maintain peace, settle disputes, and defend against external threats. And right now they're very interested in you and your fleet. Tae-yang studied the alien commander. What do they want from us? The council is facing a crisis. There's a species called the Vraxil hegemony that has been expanding aggressively. They've conquered 12 systems in the last decade. Diplomatic solutions have failed. The council needs military assets, and your fleet represents significant firepower. You want us to fight your war, Ji-won said sharply. I want to offer you a deal, Hyunwoo corrected. Fight with us against the Vraxil, and the council will provide you with everything you need. Resources, territory, support to rebuild a human colony. You'll have a home again. Tae-yang was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I want to see Earth first. Before I agree to anything, I need to see my homeworld. The council agreed to his terms. A week later, a small fleet of ships made the journey to the Sol system. The Terran officers stood on the observation deck of a council vessel as they approached the third planet. Earth was unrecognizable. The continents were different shapes. The oceans had risen and fallen multiple times. The atmosphere was thicker, giving the planet a greenish tint instead of the blue Tae-yang remembered. And floating above the oceans were massive cities made of crystal and light. The planet is now called Primus, Da-eun explained. It's inhabited by the Quilori, an aquatic species. They're peaceful and have lived here for about 400,000 years. When they arrived, Earth was completely uninhabited. All traces of human civilization had been eroded away by time. Tae-yang watched his homeworld turn slowly below him. Somewhere down there had been the city where he was born, the academy where he trained, the memorial where his parents were buried. All of it was gone, worn away by the endless march of centuries. What happened to us? He asked quietly. How did humanity fall? Tae-kun pulled up historical records on a display. The information is incomplete, but here's what we know. About 800,000 years ago, the Freck Dominion emerged from the galactic south. They were a reptilian species with a belief in genetic supremacy. They saw other species as inferior and worthy only of extermination. The display showed images reconstructed from ancient data fragments, massive Freck warships bombarding planets, cities burning, refugees fleeing in damaged ships. The Terran Star Republic fought back. From what we can tell, the war lasted almost a century. Humanity fought with everything they had, but the wreck were too numerous. One by one, the human colonies fell. Earth was the last to go. The final images showed orbital bombardment of Earth, the planet's surface burning, the oceans boiling away. There were survivors, Da-eun continued. Small groups of humans scattered across the galaxy, hiding on remote worlds. But without their homeworld, without their infrastructure, they couldn't sustain themselves. Over the next 100,000 years, the last humans slowly died out. Some from age, some from disease. Some were hunted down by wreck purge fleets. By 700,000 years ago, humanity was gone. And the wreck? Kyungmi asked. They overextended themselves. Their empire collapsed in civil war about 200,000 years later. They went extinct as well. Both our species and theirs are now just entries in historical databases. Tae-yang felt a rage building inside him that he hadn't known was possible. His entire species, billions upon billions of people across hundreds of worlds, all wiped out. For what? For the sick ideology of creatures who were themselves now dust? But then he noticed something. In the historical records, there were references to wreck battle tactics, their ship formations, their strategic doctrines. He recognized some of them. These tactics, he said, pointing at the display, are the Vraxil using similar methods? Hyunwoo looked surprised. Yes, actually. The Vraxil military doctrine shares several similarities with what we know of the wreck. Why? Tae-yang's expression hardened. Because I've fought against these tactics before. Different enemy, same methods. And I know how to beat them. He turned to face Hyunwoo directly. Here's my counteroffer to your council. Give us a system to call home. Provide us with the resources we need to wake our people and start rebuilding. Do this and we'll stop the Vraxil for you. Not just stop them. We'll break them so completely that they'll never threaten anyone again. Admiral, there are 40,000 people on your fleet. The Vraxil have billions. Their navy alone has over 500 capital ships, Hyunwoo warned. Numbers aren't everything, Ji-won said with a cold smile. Quality matters more than quantity. How many of your council ships have fought a real war? Most of our commanders have only experienced border skirmishes and peacekeeping operations, Hyunwoo admitted. Then they don't understand war. Not real war. But we do, Taeyang said. Every person on my fleet was trained for combat. We explored the galaxy expecting to find hostile forces. We were ready to fight and die if necessary. And now that we know what happened to our species, we have nothing left to lose. Sang-hoon stepped forward. I've been examining your current ship designs. No offense, but your technology is primitive compared to ours. You've spent 2 million years advancing, and somehow you've gone backwards. What do you mean? Chun asked. Your power systems are inefficient. Your weapons are outdated. Your defensive shields couldn't stop a Terran missile from 1 million years ago. You've focused on peaceful development and exploration. We focused on survival and military superiority. Our ships are better than yours, Kyungmi added, and your tactical training is inadequate for serious warfare. I've reviewed your battle records against the Vraxel. You fight defensively, reactively. You try to minimize casualties and collateral damage. Those are noble goals, but they don't win wars. Hyunwoo looked offended. We have rules of engagement. Laws of war. We're civilized species. And that's why you're losing, Taeyang said bluntly. The Vraxel don't care about your rules. They'll exploit your mercy and use it against you. But we understand what it takes to survive against an enemy that wants you extinct. We learned that lesson the hard way. He paused, looking back at Earth one last time. Take us to your council. Let me explain to them what real war looks like, and then let us remind the galaxy why humanity was feared. 3 days later, Admiral Taeyang stood before the Galactic Council in their chambers on the capital world. 15 species, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, all staring at this relic from a dead age. Chairwoman Bora, a tall being with 4 arms and silver skin, spoke first. Admiral Taeyang, we have heard your offer. You claim you can defeat the Vraxel hegemony. What makes you so certain? Taeyang looked at each council member in turn. Because we've already died once. We have nothing left to fear. And an enemy with nothing to fear is the most dangerous enemy of all. The council chamber fell silent. Give us Haven's Reach system as you offered. Give us resources to wake our people. And give us 6 months to prepare. Then point us at the Vraxel, and we'll show you what the last humans can do. After hours of debate, the council voted, 13 in favor, 2 abstaining. The decision was made. Humanity was going to war again. Haven's Reach was a beautiful system with 3 habitable planets, orbiting a stable yellow star. The council had given it to the Terrans as promised, and Admiral Taeyang wasted no time putting it to use. The 37 ships of the 7th Fleet moved into orbit around the 2nd planet, and the real work began. The first task was waking the crew. Taeyang couldn't do this with just his command staff. He needed everyone: engineers, doctors, teachers, pilots, marines, and families. The 7th Fleet wasn't just a military force. It had been designed as a long-term exploration mission, carrying everything needed to establish colonies on distant worlds. Over 3 weeks, 40,000 people were slowly brought out of cryostasis. Each one woke to the same devastating news. Their world was gone. Their species was extinct. They were the last humans alive. Some broke down completely. Others became angry, violent, demanding revenge against an enemy that was already dead. But most, after the initial shock wore off, simply asked what came next. Taeyang addressed them all in a broadcast from the Indomitable. I know this is hard. I know it feels impossible. But we're still here. We're still alive. And as long as one human draws breath, humanity is not extinct. We have been given a chance to rebuild, to create a new home. But first we have a job to do. He explained the situation with the Vraxel hegemony, how they were expanding through conquest, destroying civilizations, taking what they wanted through force, how they reminded him of the wreck who had destroyed Earth. The Council wants us to stop the Vraxel. And we will. Not because we owe the Council anything, but because we will not allow another species to suffer what we suffered. We know what extinction feels like. We will make sure no one else has to learn that lesson. The response from the fleet was overwhelming. These people had lost everything. They needed purpose, needed direction, needed something to fight for. Protecting others from the same fate gave them that purpose. Training began immediately. Chief Engineer Sang Hoon took control of the fleet's maintenance and upgrades. He was amazed to discover that despite being idle for 1,000,000 years, the Terran ships were still superior to modern vessels. The fusion reactors still generated more power. The quantum processors still calculated faster. The plasma cannons still hit harder. "It's actually embarrassing," he told Tae Yang during a briefing. "These species have had 2,000,000 years to advance, and they've somehow made worse ships than we had." They focused on comfort and efficiency instead of combat effectiveness. He spent weeks studying modern galactic technology, looking for anything useful. Most of it was disappointingly primitive, but he found a few innovations worth incorporating. Modern communication systems had better range. Some sensor arrays had interesting detection capabilities. He began integrating the best of both eras. Captain Ji-won took charge of combat training. She gathered all the pilots, gunners, and tactical officers for intensive drills. They ran simulation after simulation, practicing maneuvers that modern galactic forces had never even considered. "We're going to fight differently than they expect," she explained to her squadron commanders. "Modern warfare in this galaxy is too polite. They broadcast warnings before firing. They avoid civilian areas. They give enemies chances to surrender. We can't afford that luxury." Lieutenant Hae-won, one of the youngest officers in the fleet, raised a concern. "Captain, won't the Council object to aggressive tactics?" Ji-won's smile was cold. "The Council hired us to win. They didn't hire us to be nice about it. When the Vraxel attack a colony, they don't send polite warnings. They just kill everyone. If we want to stop them, we need to be willing to do what's necessary." The training was brutal and intense. Hae-won led her fighter squadron through combat drills that left them exhausted and drained. But they were getting better every day. Sharper, faster, more lethal. Meanwhile, Strategic Officer Kyung-mi was working on intelligence gathering. The Council had provided everything they knew about the Vraxel, but it wasn't enough. She needed real-time information, current deployment data, communication intercepts. She assigned the task to Specialist Young-soo, a cyber warfare expert who had been one of the best hackers in the old Terran military. Young-soo looked at the Vraxel communication networks and almost laughed. "Their encryption is a joke," he said. "It's like they don't even believe anyone would try to break into their systems. Give me a week." It took him 5 days. Using quantum hacking protocols that the Vraxel had never encountered, Young-soo slipped into their military networks like a ghost. He downloaded fleet positions, supply routes, command structures, and strategic plans. The intelligence was devastating. "They're not just expanding," Young-soo reported to Kyung-mi. "They're preparing for total war. They have plans to attack 18 Council worlds simultaneously. They want to shatter the Council completely and establish themselves as the dominant power in the galaxy." Kyung-mi took the information to Tae Yang immediately. "We need to act faster than planned. If the Vraxil launch this offensive, billions will die." Tae Yang studied the data carefully. "We're not ready for a full campaign yet. We need more time to prepare. But we can't just sit here while they plan genocide." That's when the distress call came in. The Pelion system was under attack. 6 billion Nathari civilians were trapped on their homeworld as a Vraxil fleet bombarded their orbital defenses. Commander Hyunwoo's ship, the Eternal Vigilance, was part of the defense force, but they were badly outnumbered. 40 Vraxil warships against 12 Council vessels. Hyunwoo's desperate message reached Haven's Reach. "Any Council ships in range, we need immediate assistance. Pelion is falling. We can't hold them. Please, anyone, help us." Tae Yang looked at his officers. They weren't fully ready. They had only been training for 6 weeks. But people were dying right now, and he couldn't ignore that. "How many ships can we deploy?" he asked. 7 battleships are combat ready, Sang-hoon reported. The rest are still undergoing systems checks. 7 against 40, Ji-won said thoughtfully. "I've faced worse odds." "No, you haven't," Kyung-mi said flatly. "True, but I've always wanted to," Ji-won replied with a grin. Tae Yang made his decision. "Alert the fleet. 7 ships will jump to Pelion. Captain Ji-won, you'll command Retribution. I'll take Indomitable. Select 5 more captains you trust. We leave in 1 hour." The preparation was frantic but efficient. Crews rushed to their stations. Weapons were armed. Shields were powered up. The 7 Terran battleships formed up in space, their million-year-old hulls gleaming under Haven's Reach sun. "All ships, this is Admiral Tae Yang. We're about to enter combat for the first time in 1,000,000 years. The enemy outnumbers us. They think they're the strongest force in the galaxy. Let's remind them what happens when they face humanity. Jump in 3, 2, 1. Space ripped open as the 7 ships entered hyperspace. The journey to Pelion took 3 hours. When they emerged, the battle was going badly. The Eternal Vigilance was heavily damaged, its shields flickering. 2 Council ships had already been destroyed. The Vraxel fleet was methodically destroying the orbital platforms while landing troops on the planet below. The Vraxel commander noticed the new arrivals and sent a mocking transmission. More Council ships? How many do we need to destroy before you learn? Surrender now and we'll make your deaths quick. Taeyang didn't bother responding with words. Instead, he opened a fleet-wide tactical channel. All ships execute Formation Delta. Target their command ship first. G1, show them what retribution can do. The 7 Terran ships moved with precision that shocked the Vraxil. They didn't spread out defensively like Council forces. Instead, they formed a tight spearhead and drove straight at the enemy fleet. The Vraxil opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts, missiles, beam weapons. The space between the fleets lit up with deadly energy. But the Terran shields held. Technology from 1,000,000 years ago proved superior to anything the Vraxil could throw at them. Captain G1's ship reached the Vraxil command vessel first. At point-blank range, she executed a maneuver called the Hammer. Every weapon on Retribution fired simultaneously at a single target. The massive Vraxil battleship simply vaporized. Its shields overwhelmed in an instant. The Vraxil fleet reacted with panic. They had never encountered an enemy this aggressive, this precise, this lethal. Taeyang's voice was calm as he issued orders. Target their engine sections. Disable, don't destroy. I want them alive to spread the word about what happened here. The battle became a masterclass in military efficiency. The Terran ships moved in perfect coordination, each one covering the others. When a Vraxil ship tried to flank them, Lieutenant Heywan's fighter squadron emerged from the Indomitable's launch bays and tore them apart with missile strikes. Hyunwoo watched from the damaged bridge of his ship in absolute amazement. 7 ships were defeating 40. No, not just defeating. They were dominating. The Vraxil were retreating, their formation breaking apart in confusion and fear. In less than an hour, the battle was over. 31 Vraxil ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 9 jumped away in full retreat, abandoning their landing forces on the planet below. The Terran fleet had not lost a single ship. Not even one. Taeyang opened a channel to the Eternal Vigilance. Commander Hyunwoo, are you intact? The Battle of Pelion changed everything. Within days, recordings of the fight spread across the entire galaxy. 7 ancient human ships defeating 40 modern Vraxil warships. The footage was analyzed by every military academy, every strategic institute, every government and council space. The conclusion was always the same. The Terrans fought like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Admiral Taeyang became famous overnight, but not everyone celebrated. The Council Ethics Committee summoned him to answer questions about his tactics. Specifically, they wanted to know why he had destroyed so many Vraxil ships instead of accepting their surrender. Taeyang stood before the committee in the council chambers. Chairwoman Bora looked uncomfortable as she read the charges. Admiral, you are accused of using excessive force. 17 Vraxil ships tried to surrender after their command vessel was destroyed. Your forces ignored their surrender and continued attacking. This violates council warfare protocols. Taeyang looked at the committee members without any sign of remorse. You hired me to stop the Vraxil. That's what I did. You were supposed to defend Pelion, not commit acts that border on war crimes, one committee member said angrily. War crimes? Taeyang's voice went cold. I've reviewed what the Vraxil do to conquered populations. They execute the leaders, enslave the workers, and kill anyone who resists. They don't take prisoners. They don't show mercy. And you want me to treat them gently? We have laws of war for a reason, Bora said. Without them, we're no better than the enemies we fight. Taeyang leaned forward. Let me tell you about laws of war. 800,000 years ago, my species followed laws. We had ethics committees and rules of engagement. We tried to be civilized while fighting the wreck. And do you know what happened? We went extinct. Every man, woman, and child killed. Our entire civilization erased from existence. He stood up, his voice rising. I won't let that happen again. Not to us and not to anyone else. The Vraxil are preparing to attack 18 council worlds. They plan to kill billions of people. You can debate ethics after those people are safe. Until then, I'll fight this war the way it needs to be fought. The chamber fell silent. Finally, Bora spoke. We understand your position, Admiral. But you must understand ours. If we abandon our principles, what are we fighting for? Survival, Taeyang said simply. Everything else comes after that. The committee couldn't agree on a formal reprimand, so they dismissed him with a warning. But the damage to his reputation in council circles was done. Half the galaxy saw him as a dangerous relic from a more brutal age. The other half saw him as their only hope against the Vraxil. Taeyang didn't care what they thought. He had a war to win. Back at Haven's Reach, Strategic Officer Kyung-mi had been working on a plan. She gathered the command staff in the war room aboard Indomitable to present it. We can't fight the entire Vraxil fleet in open battle, she explained, pulling up star charts and tactical displays. They have 500 capital ships across their empire. We have 37. Even with our technological advantage, those numbers would overwhelm us eventually. So what do you suggest? Captain Ji-won asked. We don't fight their fleet. We destroy their ability to field a fleet. Kyung-mi highlighted several systems on the map. These are Vraxil staging areas, supply depots, fuel refineries, and ammunition factories. Without these, their ships can't operate. We hit these targets and cripple their war machine. Chief Engineer Sang-hoon studied the plan carefully. Most of these facilities are heavily defended. We'd need to fight our way in and out. Not if they can't see us coming, Kyung-mi replied. She turned to Sang-hoon. Can you develop stealth missiles using our old cloaking technology? Sang-hoon's eyes lit up. The Council doesn't have cloaking tech. Their sensors won't be calibrated to detect it. Yes, I can build stealth missiles. Give me 2 weeks. You have 1 week, Taeyang said. The Vraxil won't wait for us to be ready. Sang-hoon grumbled but got to work. He pulled together teams of engineers and set them to building a new type of weapon. They used Terran cloaking fields, modern propulsion systems, and massive explosive warheads. The result was the Wraith missile, a weapon that was invisible to every sensor system in current use. While Sang-hoon built weapons, Specialist Young-soo continued his intelligence work. He had become a ghost in Vraxil networks, watching their communications, tracking their fleet movements, learning their secrets. One day he discovered something important. Admiral, I found something, Young-soo reported. The Vraxil warlord Zirax has issued a personal challenge. He's calling you a primitive playing with old toys. He says the Terran victory at Pelion was luck, and he's committed the Vraxil Grand Fleet to destroy us. How many ships in this Grand Fleet? Taeyang asked. 500 warships. Everything they have. He wants to prove insectoid superiority by crushing the last humans. Kyung-mi saw the opportunity immediately. If they commit everything to one attack, they'll leave their infrastructure undefended. This is perfect. We can execute the supply strikes while their fleet is distracted hunting us. The plan was set in motion. The Terran fleet would split into small strike groups, each targeting different Vraxil facilities. They would move fast, hit hard, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. Lieutenant Hae-won was given command of one strike group. 3 ships and orders to destroy a major fuel depot in the Kessel sector. She was nervous but determined. This was her first independent command. Remember your training, Captain Ji-won told her before departure. Fast in, fast out. Don't get caught in a prolonged fight. The strike groups launched simultaneously, jumping to different parts of Vraxil space. Hae-won's team arrived at the fuel depot to find it protected by 12 defense platforms and a small garrison fleet. Against traditional tactics, it would have been a tough fight, but Hae-won didn't use traditional tactics. Her ship stayed at extreme range and launched the new Wraith missiles. The Vraxil defenders never saw them coming. The cloaked weapons slipped past every sensor, every defensive system, every scanner. The fuel depot exploded in a massive fireball that could be seen from 3 star systems away. By the time the Vraxil figured out what happened, Hae-won's strike group was already jumping away. Over the next 6 weeks, the pattern repeated across Vraxil territory. Supply convoys disappeared. Ammunition factories exploded. Command bunkers were hit by missiles that came from nowhere. Fuel refineries went up in flames. The Vraxil military infrastructure began to collapse. Warlord Zirax became desperate. His grand fleet was ready for battle, but the Terrans wouldn't face them. Instead, they struck like ghosts, hitting targets and vanishing before his ships could respond. His commanders reported the same thing over and over. They never saw the enemy coming. Fear spread through the Vraxil ranks. How do you fight an enemy you can't detect? How do you defend against weapons you can't see? Young-soo, watching from inside their networks, decided to help that fear along. He planted false intelligence in Vraxil communication systems. Reports of Terran ships appearing in systems they'd never visited. Sightings of human fleets that didn't exist. Warnings of attacks that never came. The Vraxil military began jumping at shadows, sending ships to defend against phantom threats while real attacks hid elsewhere. Then Young-Su planted his masterpiece. Detailed intelligence about a hidden Terran base in the Kessel Nebula. Fleet positions, defensive capabilities, supply levels. Everything Warlord Zrax would need to plan a crushing attack. All of it was completely false. Zrax took the bait. He couldn't resist. The chance to destroy the Terran base and prove his superiority was too tempting. He committed the entire Grand Fleet, all 500 ships, to a single massive assault on the nebula. When the Vraxil fleet arrived at the Kessel Nebula, they found something waiting for them. Not a base, not a garrison. Just 37 Terran ships positioned perfectly in the nebula's particle clouds. Admiral Taeyang watched the enemy fleet enter his trap. All ships hold position. Wait for my signal. The Kessel Nebula was filled with charged particles that interfered with most sensor systems. Vraxil ships designed for open space combat were nearly blind in the dense clouds, but Terran sensors built for exploration in hazardous environments worked perfectly. Warlord Zrax realized too late that he'd been deceived. He tried to order a retreat, but Taeyang didn't give him the chance. All ships execute Plan Ragnarok. Show them what happens when you hunt humans. The battle that followed was brutal and one-sided. The Terran ships used the nebula itself as a weapon. Sang-Hoon's engineers had mapped every gas pocket, every particle density variation, every unstable region. They ignited sections of the nebula, creating massive explosions that blinded and burned the Vraxil formations. While the enemy ships flailed in confusion, the Terrans struck with surgical precision. They targeted engines, weapon systems, and command bridges. Disabled ships were left drifting while the Terrans moved on to the next target captain. Ji-Wan's Retribution led a flanking maneuver that caught 20 Vraxil cruisers in a crossfire. Her weapons officers fired with such accuracy that they destroyed ships with minimal shots, conserving ammunition for the long fight ahead. Lieutenant Hei-Wan's fighters danced through the nebula clouds, using their small size and maneuverability to attack larger ships from angles they couldn't defend. The news of the Kessel Nebula battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. 500 Vraxil ships destroyed by 37 human vessels, the greatest naval defeat in recorded galactic history. The Vraxil hegemony, which had seemed unstoppable just months ago, was suddenly in complete disarray. Without their grand fleet and with their supply infrastructure in ruins, the Vraxil military machine collapsed. Conquered worlds rose up in rebellion. Garrison forces, cut off from supplies and reinforcements, surrendered or fled. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was falling apart. 3 weeks after the Nebula battle, the Vraxil High Council sent a message to the Galactic Council. They wanted to negotiate surrender terms. Chairwoman Bora invited Admiral Taeyang to the peace conference. The Vraxil representatives arrived in badly damaged ships, their proud bearing replaced by defeat and fear. They sat across from the council delegation, but their eyes kept darting to the human admiral standing quietly in the corner. The chief Vraxil negotiator, a scarred veteran named Krax, spoke first. We acknowledge defeat. The hegemony will accept demilitarization and territorial concessions. We ask only that our species be allowed to survive. Bora nodded. The council will accept your surrender under the following terms: complete military disarmament, democratic reforms in your government, reparations to the worlds you conquered, and war crimes trials for your military leadership. Krax agreed to everything without argument. Before leaving, he approached Taeyang directly. I need to know, how did you defeat us so completely? We had superior numbers. We had modern ships. By every calculation, we should have won. Taeyang looked at the defeated warrior. You fought for conquest and glory. We fought because we know what extinction feels like. When you have nothing left to lose, you become very dangerous. Remember that next time your species considers going to war. With the Vraxil surrender, the war was officially over. The council threw a massive celebration, inviting dignitaries from across the galaxy to honor the Terran fleet's victory. But the celebration was complicated by an uncomfortable question. What do we do with the humans now? The debate in the council chambers was intense. Some members saw the Terrans as heroes who had saved countless lives. Others saw them as dangerous relics too willing to embrace total warfare. The galaxy had never encountered a species quite like humanity before. "They're too violent," one council member argued. "They don't follow our laws of war. They refuse to accept our ethical guidelines. How can we let them remain armed? They saved billions of lives," another countered. "The Vraxel were planning genocide on a massive scale. Without the Terrans, we would have lost this war." Chairwoman Bora listened to both sides before making her decision. The Terrans will be granted full sovereignty over Haven's Reach system and membership in the Galactic Council. They will maintain their fleet with full military autonomy. Any species that objects can remember what happened to the Vraxil when they underestimated humanity. The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity officially had a home again. Admiral Taeyang returned to Haven's Reach with mixed feelings. They had won the war and secured a future for their species, but the cost was heavy. 43 Terrans had died in the fighting, and hundreds more were injured. Each loss felt like a piece of humanity dying all over again. The work of rebuilding began in earnest. The remaining crew members were awakened from cryostasis. Teachers, doctors, farmers, artists, children. The fleet had carried complete cross-sections of human society, and now they all had a chance to build something new. The second planet of Haven's Reach was beautiful. Green forests, blue oceans, snow-capped mountains. It wasn't Earth, but it could become home. The Terrans named it New Terra and began establishing the first settlements. Chief Engineer Sang-hoon oversaw the construction of cities using a blend of ancient Terran architecture and modern building techniques. Within months, a city of 50,000 people grew on the coast of the largest continent. They named it Remembrance in honor of those who had been lost. Captain Jiwon took command of the Terran Defense Force. The 37 ships of the 7th Fleet would never be enough to protect their new world alone, so she began training programs to expand their military. Young people from New Terra volunteered eagerly, wanting to serve like their legendary ancestors. Lieutenant Haewon became an instructor at the new Naval Academy. She taught tactics and strategy to cadets who hung on her every word. She was only 28 years old, but she was already a veteran of battles that would be studied for centuries. Strategic Officer Kyung-mi worked with Council intelligence agencies, sharing knowledge and building networks. The galaxy still had threats, and she wanted humanity to be ready for whatever came next. Specialist Young-soo became the head of the Terran Cybersecurity Division. He spent his days fortifying their networks and occasionally, when he got bored, taking quiet looks at what potential enemies were planning. Old habits died hard. 1 year after the war ended, the Terrans held a ceremony on New Terra. They built a massive memorial in the center of Remembrance City. It was a wall of quantum-etched crystal, nearly a kilometer long and 20 meters high. On that wall, they carved every name they could recover from the historical archives. Every human who died when Earth fell. Billions of names. Every man, woman, and child who had been lost to time. Dayun attended the ceremony, along with many other council representatives. She stood beside Captain Jiwon as the monument was unveiled, tears streaming down her face. "I've studied your species my entire life," she said quietly, "but I never imagined I'd meet actual humans, let alone become friends with them." Jiwon squeezed her shoulder gently. "Thank you for remembering us when everyone else forgot. That means more than you know." Admiral Taeyang gave a speech at the ceremony. He stood before the monument looking at the endless rows of names and spoke to both the living and the dead. "We are the last children of Earth. We carry the memories of a civilization that spanned hundreds of worlds. We remember the teachers who educated us, the artists who inspired us, the leaders who guided us, and the common people who made our society work. We remember them all." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "This monument will stand for 1,000,000 years or more. Future generations will look at these names and know that humanity once filled the galaxy. We were here. We mattered. We made a difference, and we're not done yet. As long as one human lives, we will protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will stand against tyranny and oppression. We will fight for those who have no one else to fight for them. This is our promise to those who came before us and to those who will come after." The crowd stood in silence for a long moment, remembering the billions who had been lost. Life on New Terra settled into a rhythm over the following years. Children were born, the first humans in 1,000,000 years to grow up knowing they had a homeworld. Schools were built. Libraries were filled. Art and music that had been lost for eons were recreated from memory and imagination. But the Terran fleet didn't disband. Instead, it became the Council's rapid response force. Whenever aggression threatened peaceful species, Whenever tyrants tried to conquer their neighbors, the call went out to Haven's Reach, and the Terrans always answered. 5 years after the HFY War, Admiral Tae Yang stood in his ready room aboard the Indomitable. The ship was orbiting New Terra, its ancient hull now bearing fresh paint in the blue and white colors of Earth. On his desk was a holographic image of his homeworld as it had been 2 million years ago. A priority message came through from Council headquarters. Raiders were attacking a colony in the Outer Rim. The local defense force was overwhelmed. They needed help immediately. Tae Yang looked at the image of Earth one more time, then activated the fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Admiral Tae Yang. We have a mission. A colony world is under attack. Innocent people are dying. Spin up your drives and prepare for jump. We're going to remind the galaxy why you don't mess with the defenseless while humans are watching. Across the Haven's Reach system, 37 ancient warships came to life. Their engines glowed with power, their weapons armed. Their crews rushed to battle stations with practiced efficiency. Someone out there needs our help, Tae Yang continued. And as long as one human draws breath, no one fights alone. Humanity has returned to the stars, and we will never abandon those who need us. The Terran fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying the last children of Earth toward another battle, another world that needed saving. Somewhere in the depths of space, among the billions of stars, 37 ships bearing the hopes and dreams of an extinct species raced to defend the innocent. The Terrans had been lost in time. They had come back to find their world destroyed and their species extinct, but they hadn't given up. They hadn't surrendered to despair. Instead, they had done what humans always did when faced with impossible odds. They fought back. They survived, and they made sure that no one else would have to suffer what they had suffered. Admiral Tae Yang sat in his command chair, watching the stars streak past as they traveled through hyperspace. Around him, his crew worked with quiet professionalism. In the hangar bays, Marines checked their weapons. In engineering,